And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we got some new interesting commanders to talk about here from Streets of New Capenna. 3 more to talk about today, so let's get to it. Starting out with Ognis the Dragon's Lash. 1, a hybrid Rakdos mana, a red mana, and a hybrid Gruul mana. Again, with these, they got some really interesting casting costs here in this set. A Vyashino Warrior, which is interesting. So they're bringing back the Vyashino. They already brought back the Cephalid as well, so bringing back some of these old creature types, which is interesting. 3/3 with haste. Whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. So this card seems pretty basic. Obviously you want haste tribal, right? Your commander's got haste, so when your commander attacks, you're going to get a tapped treasure token. The interesting thing here is that the treasure tokens are tapped, and I mentioned this in my video, my So You Hate Treasure Tokens video, which is definitely a video people are going to want to check out now, because man, is there ever a ton of treasure token stuff in this set. So that is a video that you guys might want to look at. I'll put the link up there. And the tapping is important, right? Because you have to tap your treasure token in order to use it. So this will not allow you to use your treasure tokens right away. You'll have to wait until the following turn. So if you attack with your whole team, say you got 7 creatures with haste, you're going to create 7 of those treasure tokens, but you won't be able to use them until the next turn, which could be really, really important, especially if your opponents are using some of the cards on that list. You know, like Meltdown, for example, where on their turn now they can just pay 1 red mana and destroy all your treasure tokens before you have a chance to use them. So, other than that, not a ton to talk about here. I will say, though, interestingly enough, this is a Vyashino, and there are a lot of Vyashinos. I remember one in particular, I can't remember the name, that you put them into play, and they sort of have dash before dash was a thing, where you put them into play, they attack right away, and then you return them to your hand. So that might be an interesting thing here where, you know, the Vyashino thing does fit a little bit. Obviously finding, you know, a ton of creatures with haste in this deck is not going to be a problem at all. You're going to want to do haste tribal. Might be interesting to do haste enablers, and then you could just play whatever creatures you want. You know, if you want to play the safe route would be put lots of haste creatures in here. What else are you going to do, though? You're creating a lot of treasure tokens. They're going to be tapped, but you could still use them to a sacrifice effect, obviously. You know, lots of artifact, like a Goblin Welder or something. You could use your Goblin Welder to sacrifice that treasure token and get something out of your graveyard. So you could go that route as well. Rather than relying on those treasure tokens entirely for mana, you could do a Jund artifact theme where you are using those treasure tokens for other stuff, because there's lots of ways to do that as well. You know, it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit boring in a way. It's like, okay, well, it's pretty obvious what's happening here. But I think if you wanted to go a more interesting route with it, obviously you're going to be attacking a lot, right? But the more interesting route here is I try to figure out a different way to use those treasure tokens rather than just using them for mana, I think. A much more interesting commander here, though, I think, is Mari the Killing Quill. Say that 3 times fast. 1 black, so mono black commander, and we have not had a lot of mono colored commanders in this set so far. There is a few, though. So a Vampire Assassin 3/2. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it with a hit counter on it. So before I move on, that ability is always really, really good to have on your commander, even if I don't know anything about hit counters at all, because that will hose a lot of strategies, right? That will hose maybe a lot of graveyard strategies. It's not as good as some other effects. It's not a replacement effect, right? You don't see the word instead. Whenever you see the word instead, that means it's a replacement effect. This is not a replacement effect, so they will get dice triggers. So this is not going to hose a, you know, Aristocrats deck. It's not going to hose, there's certain decks that it's not going to work great against, but it will hose your opponents a little, right? Because this is whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it with a hit counter on it. So it is going to hit the graveyard, right? Dies means specifically battlefield to graveyard. It's that phrase shrunk down to 1 word. So it is going to hit the graveyard. They are going to get the dice trigger, obviously, because it's dying, and then it will get exiled. So not great, but it is going to hose your opponents possibly a little. It is going to be helpful. However, the most important part, of course, is the rest of this card, which is Assassins, Mercenaries, and Rogues. You control. Pause there. So we have a very interesting tribal commander here, right? Before I move on with the rest of the ability. Obviously rogues, we got tons of rogue support already. The assassins and the mercenaries are really interesting ones. And of course, the assassins we have a little bit. There's the one card that I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's a black elf, I believe, and you exile an assassin card from your graveyard to destroy a creature, I think. And that is the only assassin tribal card that I think exists. I'm pretty sure. Mercenaries, there's a lot though, right? And mercenaries, because for those who don't know, way back in, can't remember which set it was, there was the mercenaries and the rebels. They sort of opposed each other, and the rebels were always a little bit more popular than the mercenaries were. I think they were a little bit better. The mercenaries were kind of notoriously not great. I'll just say Cataran Summons, which I mentioned in one of my 10 cards video, is going to be great here, right? Just 1 mana to go search your library for a mercenary card. But mercenaries search for themselves, right? That's just like with rebels. They were sort of the opposing, when you had white and the black. And the mercenaries will go get mercenaries out of your deck, which is going to be really easy to build around in this deck, obviously, because you want mercenaries. So just that, again, very interesting there. So they're all going to have Death Touch, all right? So first off, all your mercenaries, assassins, and rogues are going to have Death Touch. And again, that is something that you can, just giving all your creatures Death Touch is really, really good, right? Obviously, your commander is an assassin, so your commander is going to have Death Touch as well. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. If you do, draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens. So that's fantastic. So essentially, when you break it down, this is whenever a assassin, mercenary, or rogue, including your commander, deals damage to a player, you're going to draw a card and create 2 treasure tokens, which is phenomenal. However, you need to have those creatures in exile. So what you obviously are going to need to do in this deck, other than the, filling it with assassins, mercenaries, and rogues, is killing your opponent's creatures, right? Obviously, your opponent's having creatures shouldn't be an issue, but you're going to want to kill them as much as you can to ensure that you have, killing your opponent's creatures is great, and then exiling them is going to be great no matter what. That works good in any strategy, but you're going to want to make sure they have lots and lots of creatures in exile. In fact, what I might even do with this commander is when a creature an opponent controls dies, exile with a hit counter on. So if you cast a board wipe, if I cast a Toxic Deluge, obviously your Mari, your commander, will die, but so will every other creature. However, they're all going to see, right? Mari will see all of those creatures dying. So if there's like 7 creatures in play and you cast a board wipe, assuming you don't have any, so your opponents all have 6 creatures. You're now sending 6 creatures to exile with hit counters on them. And they're just going to sit there. Being able to use your commander's ability 6 times is pretty good. And then you will continue to kill creatures as the game goes on, right? So even just 1 board wipe can be really, really great there. And this is going to be a popular one for sure. Just the assassin, mercenary, and rogue tribal part is really great. The fact that they have Death Touch, exiling your opponent's creatures, drawing a card and treasure tokens. Who doesn't like that, right? Everybody does. This will be a popular commander for sure, especially considering it's only mono black, right? So you're like, okay, well, you got all these great 3-color commanders in this set. I don't want to go too far on this and say that this is going to be one of the most popular commanders from the set, but it might be. Considering that it's a monocolored commander, that's saying a lot, because there is just a lot of great things going on here and a lot of things that I think people are going to like and want to build around. And ending off again with something a little less exciting, Mr. Orfeo, the Boulder. Funny name. There's a lot of funny names in this set, actually. 1 black, red, and a green Rhino Warrior 2/4. Whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. Wah wah. That is it, coming off of Amari, the Killing Quill, which is such an interesting commander. This one's pretty flat. There is some stuff you can do here in these colors. Like, again, whenever I think doubling target creature's power until end of turn, I think of like Cephalid Constable or Cold-Eyed Selkie, where they want their power to be bigger because you're drawing that many cards or bouncing that many permanents. They don't fit here, obviously, because they're blue. How many creatures are in that, in Jund colors? How many options do you have there? You could just throw big creatures at your opponents, right? Whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. So you're only going to get this once. Is this maybe a new Xenagos, God of Revels? A little bit, maybe. It's kind of a worse one, right? Xenagos is just straight up better here, I think, for the most part, because Xenagos, first of all, is an indestructible enchantment, so it's going to be really hard to get it off the table. If anyone's ever played against a Xenagos deck, and I've played against lots, once it comes down, it's hard to get off the table. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gets haste and +X/+X, where X is the creature's power. So that's essentially doubling its power. That's what you're doing. And it gets haste, right? So how is Xenagos just not straight up better than this guy? I'm just thinking, whenever you attack, double target creature's power until... Yeah, so you only get the 1 trigger. Even if you attack with 10 creatures, that's, you only attack. You can only attack once each. I guess you could do multiple combats. That would be an interesting one here. Again, I think in every respect, Xenagos is better. for this strategy. The only exception being that you have black in this deck, which could add a couple of things. Overall, though, yikes, this is going to be a very unpopular commander from the set, I imagine. They kind of all be bangers, right? Some of them got to be dull. That's perfectly okay. I think we've had tons of great commanders from this set to choose from already. But that is all. That is 3 more commanders from Streets of New Capenna. Thought I'd get those brew juices flowing on some of them maybe. There's been some really interesting ones in this set. Has been some dull ones. Overall, though, I'm pretty happy with what I've seen so far, and I'm really excited to see the rest of this set. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.